service they do at the community center, but I think they're going to discuss a little bit more about their outreach and what they do with the services there. So I will pass it on to Susan Mack, program chair. Thank you.
I think I've talked about the Community Service Center in the past, but I thought I'd bring you up to date, and also for some people that I would be a new introduction. There are sheets that are on your table, and I'd like to first talk, the center was started back in 1986, and it was an interesting time in Hicksville, and I don't know how many of you remember, but at that time there were lots of kiddos that would sit on the steps of Trinity United Methodist Church. And the minister there, who was named Reverend Boyer, was the person that approached different business people and was really concerned about all these kids and not having things to do here in Hicksville in the summertime. And so that was sort of the impetus for starting the center. And he was trying, it was also a time when there were drug issues in town. And the Lutheran minister at that time was Pastor King, and he was also real involved in trying to figure out how to make this a better town for people to live in, and especially things for kids to do in the summertime. And that really led to the start of the center. And in the early years, it was funded totally by United Way, and which made it pretty easy for us because we would do an application and get the money we needed. We had a half-time director from the time we opened until 2016, when United Way, and actually before that time, United Way had decided that they weren't going to fund us anymore. And the main reason was that the Community Service Center, their mission always has stated that what they do is identify issues in town and then find other organizations to take care of those issues. And so rather than us doing direct services, it was more that we were finding other organizations or churches to carry those out. And United Way only wanted to deal with organizations that did direct services. And so that's sort of how we got out of United Way. But in recent years, we've gotten sort of back into direct services. We have no dependable funding source. All our funding comes from donations from the community. And we've been able to sort of muddle through in recent years for sure. Shannon was the part-time director for over 8 years. And we've had great directors during the time that we had directors. An interesting concept that has sort of developed with the center is that for real small organizations that are nonprofit, rather than them getting their individual nonprofit status, they come under the umbrella of the Community Service Center. So with me today is Rick Straley, who you've heard before, and he's with Growing God's Way. And so rather than Growing God's Way having a separate nonprofit status and spending 2 years doing paperwork and spending money, he's under our umbrella. And the same Steph at the end of the table is with Helping Hands in Hicksville. And the same thing applies to her. I'm with the Beautification Committee, and the Beautification Committee was the original organization that came under the Community Service Center umbrella. And so each of the organizations that's under our umbrella has their separate they have totally separate funding, but it's all, our treasurer she managed, or what would be the right word?
Tracks.
Yeah, she oversees all the different bank accounts. And Susie Guilford in the middle is a recent member of the Peacemakers, and they're a quilting group that's nonprofit that meets here at this church. And they've never had, they've just sort of pooled money and done what they needed to do. They donate lots of quilts, and they're probably going to be our most recent group coming under our umbrella. And every group has a member that's on our board, and that's something that's required, that they play an active role in what we do. So we have all these separate funds and separate organizations, but then we also have our overall organization. And just in the last few years, we've gotten back into direct service. And we love to sort of pass those things that we do on to other groups, but that hasn't happened yet. So a big thing that we're doing is the summer lunch program. And that's been done through the Community Service Center for the last 3 years. And we've done it in conjunction with the hospital. The hospital makes the meals, and we find and sort of coordinate who passes those meals out. And so for the last 2 years, Rotary's done 1 day a week, and there are 3 churches in town that do 3 of the days, and the hospital has done 1 day. Now, because of the issues with the hospital, they aren't able this year to pay for half of those meals that we hand out. And for some reason, we're handing out way more meals than we've handed out in recent years. So, so we have gotten a grant from United Way to help with paying for those meals. And also we're asking the Rotary Foundation for money. We also got money from Parker Hannafin. And we have money left over, so we think we're going to be okay. But the meals are one of the things that we coordinate. The other program that we coordinate is Tools for School. And that's the school supplies that are handed out to families that can't afford to purchase supplies. And we get a lot of help from the community in paying for those. And we would love to pass that particular project. We tried to pass it on to the PTO at school, but we haven't been successful. So we're always looking for other organizations to take that over. And I think the neat thing about the center is the fact that we've been able for, almost 40 years to exist and make things work. And there have been times, I know there's been at least over the years 2 community meetings where we were close to going out of business. We didn't know where money was going to come from. And so we've asked people from the community, businesses and churches and other organizations to come together and help us figure out how to move forward. And it's always worked, which is pretty unusual. Another project that we've done for the last 3 years, I think, is this resource book. And this is last year's, and we're just getting ready to print another one for the coming year. But it has all kinds of good information in it about our community and also about other agencies that are available. So this has been another project that we've been able to do. And interestingly, June Crosser, who lives here in town and is part of environmental services in Defiance County, used to be on our board, but she still helps us in updating this, so we appreciate her work with that. As we look, I think the main thing is we look at challenges and we look at opportunities. It is challenging to not have a paid person and not have stable funding. But there are still lots of opportunities. We still think about, I mean, our main thing is looking at our community. We spent a lot of time talking about when Mike and the Tribune were going to stop the newspaper business. That was real concerning to us, and so we talked a lot about, are there other ways that we could still have a weekly newspaper in our town? We are working more with United Way again, and because they're, I think, looking for Hicksville projects that they can be involved in. And so we appreciate them helping us with the lunches. And we're going to work with them on a volunteer database, presumably for the town. We had these meetings before where different organizations from the community came together and talked about needs of the community and how best to make those things happen. When Justin Kuhn first came back to town, he was real interested in making changes, and he was involved in some of those meetings. But I still think, you know, at least once a year, it would be good for different organizations to get together, look at what's happening in town, and just sort of brainstorm about the kinds of things that they can do. With the summer lunches, that's working better than we had ever thought, but there's still no good park program for kids in the summertime that's real organized. We do a small one on Mondays, half days, but there used to be, the village employed several people that ran a program throughout the summer for different age groups. And I think we still feel that this is something that's lacking. And I know in talking to Corey Wan, when they have the pool and splash pad, they're going to have different employees managing that area. And he's talked about, presumably, there would be somebody that would help develop more activities in the park in the summertime. And we've also looked at a mentoring program in the schools, and it's just sort of an ongoing thing that we haven't finalized, but we have been in talks with the school. So I think, you know, the neat thing about our meetings is that we do come up with different ideas, and we have a great group of people that are on our board. And we send out at the end of the year a fundraising letter, and Rotary has always been supportive of that. So we thank Rotary, and we thank all of the businesses that you all are part of, and we appreciate what you've done. Are there any questions that you have, or questions of Rick or Susie or Steph? Bruce?
The question I have is about the program at the school for people, school supplies or whatever. Is that something, when we started the school foundation, that was intended to do things that weren't in the budget of the school? Could the school foundation take over that?
We would love that. I mean,
it's just a suggestion that I'm not on that board anymore. And I mean, just the paying of it. I'm not talking about the operations. The other thing is, if someone donated, Rick, they seem to have enough money for your Growing God's Way, quoting people. You should not probably use it any money except your own, whatever's on that. Can people donate to the service center to be used in a manner that you all think it should go? I mean,
the money when we send a fundraising letter out in the fall, or in the, close to Christmas, that money is for our general fund. And sometimes part of that money will go to a specific project, but that's sort of to keep us going.
Yeah, I don't know how your plant cell does as far as what it makes for you. Is that sufficient for your funding for
Yeah,
the
the
most
plant-
part?
Right,
Do you have needs that's not covered by that?
not at the moment.
Okay,
I mean, the beautification committee is well funded at the moment.
and Growing God's Ways well funded, correct, Rick?
So far, yeah.
Okay.
We don't have a problem
So
raising the
then-
funds we need.
Brings me down to Stephanie or some of these other things. Do you have fundraisers for some of these, or is that just the general community letter that goes out, or?
Now, they have, go ahead.
Yeah, we run fundraisers periodically throughout the year. We're gonna be doing another bourbon thing on Facebook that always earns us. And then we have several people in the community that just donate. And kind of enough to do so. But, yeah, it's not steady. It's always up and down and up and down. But, we've also changed, Bruce, thanks for asking about Helping Hands. We've also changed, when we started, when Neha and I started this, it started to help people that were cancer patients. And now we've gradually just kept expanding it just to help people who are just in need, usually in dire need. I know that Steve has helped me a couple of times, and so, we'll just keep going. The money kind of comes in when it needs to come in, so.
If there's
Pretty much
peacemakers,
answered my question. I guess I was looking to see if there were specific financial needs.
Steve Otter.
Especially after today.
You've got
No, I
lots of
did
needs,
good,
buddy.
yeah. I think, I mean, right now, this lunch program is taking way more money than what we thought it was going to take, just because we're giving out a lot more lunches. And without the hospital paying half, that's made a big difference in our finances.
Defiance Area Foundation pays the other half, right? Who pays the other half?
We're paying the whole thing, but we've gotten money from United Way, we've gotten
I meant
money.
United Way, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we've gotten money, from Parker Hannafin. We're asking Rotary for money. We have some money left over from last year's fundraising, so.
What's the total, you think, for the summer lunch program today, or this summer?
We're thinking close to 13,000. We're not gonna know until, I mean, we sort of pay by the month.
I'm gonna go back to Stephanie again. There's some money there that probably can be needed to use, but you also, I don't know if you wanna give a very brief explanation of the Helping Hands. I mean, my understanding kinda is you help people get, medical appointments and stuff. I don't know if I really understand totally what you do, I guess what I'm saying. So, is there a need for volunteers even as much as maybe money?
Most of what we do, what has happened is primarily financial. We'll help with rent, we'll help with utility bills, we help with gas cards, getting people to and from. We don't have a volunteer, we don't have enough volunteers to take people to the hospitals or to their appointments. It's not feasible, but we can pay to cover other things. We'll help, like if our families, our clients have kids, at Christmas, we'll actually give them money so they can buy Christmas gifts instead of having to worry about paying medical bills, and not giving Christmas gifts to their kids. So we've really broadened our horizons just to literally be helping hands, to help however we can, and it is primarily financial, and I think our main goal is to help people who are truly in need, so. Does that answer your question, too?
Gives you
One of
much
the
better idea.
Yeah, one of the things that we've talked about over the years is some transportation, transportation needs. low-income people. And the senior center pretty much takes care of older people, but there are people that don't fall under them that need help getting places, need help getting to appointments, need help going to we don't have a grocery anymore, if they need to go to a grocery. So we've talked with United Way, because even on a countywide, they've been talking about a transportation system for years. And it's just never been finalized in terms of how it would help our community in terms of providing transportation. And so that's sort of a project that's been floating around for a long time.
Didn't Rotary help fund a van, was that for the hospital
Yeah, the
use
hospital
only,
has a
which would
van.
be more local, I don't know how far they could get people, but that wasn't restricted to older people, was that? Was just
No.
anybody need transportation?
But it's mainly transportation to the hospital.
Right, for the
It's
hospital.
related to the hospital.
Right. Which the things you're doing could be going anywhere.
Right. And it's more people that need to go to Bryan to the hospital, I mean, just because of the doctors they're associated with or whatever their medical issue is. But it used to be, and I don't know recently, but it used to be that would be one of the biggest questions, was people asking for help getting someplace. The transportation thing was a big issue.
They use the pricing.
And I do want to add on that we have talked several times in our meetings about trying to buy a van and somehow us being a center for that. Insurance has been the big issue. And so that's something that we've been talking about, but again, that would have to be something that would be funded. And then we'd have to find drivers and
And
finding.
you'd almost have to have a paid person to coordinate things. I mean, so that's where I think, having some kind of community meeting once a year or something would be good. To sort of see how other groups feel about that. We did have an interesting meeting with some of the pastors here in town, and they talked about their concerns, and we've tried, and I think one of the things they talked a lot about was help for those families where somebody in the family has dementia. And that seemed to be, with the pastors, one of the things that they saw a lot. That, one spouse would be taking care of another one and not having a whole lot of resources to do that. But apparently there's a lot of